Good morning. I'm Rabbi Batya Glazer, Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, and I want to thank you for being with us today. We're grateful for this opportunity to come together as a reflective community in a way that will protect the safety and health of our community. As this is a Zoom event, please know that each of us will be muted for the duration of the presentation. Later in the presentation, we will have the opportunity to type questions into the chat feature. I'm pleased to introduce the Jewish Community Relations Council Chair, Arlene Fickler, to open our program.
Thank you, Rabbi Glazer. It is my honor on behalf of the Jewish Community Relations Council and the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia to welcome you to our annual Yizkor Memorial Ceremony. This is the 56th annual ceremony since the bronze statue titled A Monument to 6 Million Jewish Martyrs was erected in April 1964 at 16th and Arch Streets at the head of Philadelphia's iconic Benjamin Franklin Parkway. Created by internationally renowned artist Nathan Rappaport, himself a Holocaust survivor, the sculpture was the first public monument in North America to be dedicated to the memory of the victims of the Shoah. The monument was the idea of several survivors of the Nazi Holocaust who had come to settle in Philadelphia and who fervently wished to perpetuate the memory of the 6 million who had perished. On April 26, 1964, the monument to the 6 million Jewish martyrs was unveiled and presented to the city of Philadelphia by the Association of Jewish New Americans, known today as the Association of Jewish Holocaust Survivors, and Philadelphia's Jewish Federation. A few years ago, the plaza surrounding the sculpture was redesigned and expanded in order to educate the public about the atrocities of the Holocaust, as well as honor the memory of the martyrs. Each year since the erection of the memorial statue, JCRC's Memorial Committee for the 6 million Jewish martyrs has coordinated an annual service to pay tribute to the victims of the Holocaust, ensuring that this dark chapter of history remains in our living memories, in observance of the Philadelphia survivors' wishes that we always remember. Each year, we worry about the weather and if we will be able to have our ceremony at the foot of the statue, or will we need to move it inside because of rain. Never did we anticipate that we would not be able to assemble together for our Yizkor ceremony because of a pandemic. I am glad that so many people are joining us virtually today on the eve of Yom HaShoah to remember the 6 million Jewish martyrs who perished during the Holocaust, and I thank you for doing so. To begin our ceremony today, we welcome violinist Philip Cates, a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Mr. Cates has participated in the JCRC's Holocaust Memorial Ceremony almost every year since he joined the orchestra in 1980. He will play a melody composed by Joseph Krupinski, a survivor of the Shoah. Krupinski was sent first to Auschwitz on November 27, 1941, and registered as a Polish political prisoner. In March 1943, he was transported to Buchenwald. It was there that Krupinski created over 100 original compositions. He composed only at night and by candlelight, often working into the early hours of the morning. Krupinski was evacuated from Buchenwald on April 10, 1945, and endured a death march before being liberated by United States Armed Forces on April 24th. Thank you, Mr. Cates, for playing one of Krupinski's melodies for us today, as we look back at prior memorial ceremonies when we were all together. Thank you, Mr. Cates. In addition to this annual memorial ceremony to the 6 million Jewish martyrs, Philadelphia's Jewish Community Relations Council is committed to the sacred work of keeping the memory of our perished people alive and teaching the lessons of the Holocaust to fight anti-Semitism and all forms of contemporary bigotry. For more than 4 decades, we have reached out to young people through our youth symposium on the Holocaust, our Conversation with a Survivor program, and the Anielewicz Arts Competition. Named in memory of the heroic young leader who organized Jewish resistance and gave his life fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943, the Anielewicz Creative Arts Competition invites students grades 7 through 12 to learn about the Holocaust and respond by means of creative expressions. Each year, over 400 students from a wide range of backgrounds participate in the Anielewicz Creative Arts Competition, submitting original, creative responses to their Holocaust studies in the forms of poetry, prose, painting, sculpture, music, dance, and video. In a moment, we will hear one of those students, Elle Miller, who will read her poem titled, "My Father Used to Say." Ms. Miller, whose great-grandparents were Holocaust survivors, is an 8th grade student at the Shipley School. Her poem won first prize for 7th to 8th grade poetry in JCRC's 2019 Anielewicz Creative Arts Competition last year. Ms. Miller, renewed congratulations on your award, and thank you for sharing your poem with us as part of our Yom HaShoah memorial this afternoon.
Thank you. My father used to say, be proud of your nationality and be a contributing citizen. Now our country says we don't belong, that only humans can live here, and that apparently does not include us. My father used to say your name with pride, it's yours forever to keep. Now the Nazis say, this is your new name, 0982-57. What's wrong with mine, or Moshe's, or Rachel's? My father used to say, use your voice and stand up for what you believe in. Now we have no say, no voice, no choice, no rights, no dignity. My father used to say, wear a coat, you don't want to catch a chill. Now we are barely living in wretched, freezing conditions with only a few tattered rags to cover our bare bones. My father used to say, don't waste your food. Now there is no food to waste. My father used to say, look at the smoke rising up from the beautiful menorah candles. Now I see the smoke rising up out of the chimneys. I wish I could have one more chance to hear what my father had to say.
Thank you, Elle, for sharing your poignant poem with us. Good morning. I am Sarita Gocial, Chair of the JCRC Holocaust Memorial Committee and a child of survivors. The Holocaust is a tragedy whose size defies comprehension. 6 million Jews were murdered. 1.5 million were children. Thousands of Jewish communities were obliterated. Today, we commemorate 75 years since the liberation of the concentration camps and the end of World War II in Europe. Until the liberating armies marched into Buchenwald, Auschwitz, and Dachau and saw the remnants of our people, the walking dead, the world refused to believe. How could this have happened without the world knowing? The truth is that world leaders knew. The truth is that those living near the camps knew. It was only after the Allied soldiers entered the camps and saw and smelled the horrors perpetrated there that the world was forced to look. We, the living, bear witness today, not just at this commemoration, but as a united observance in communities around the world. Together, we affirm that the innocent lives lost in the Holocaust have not and will not ever be forgotten. May their memory be for a blessing. As we listen to the haunting melody of Schindler's List, celebrated Israeli sand artist Ilana Yahav will be sharing her unique art with us. Ilana was married to Itzik Yahav, a navigator in the Israeli Air Force. The Yom Kippur War broke out during her first pregnancy, and on the second day of fighting, she was told that her husband had fallen in battle. She sat Shiva. Later, there were indications that he was in Syrian captivity. 8 months later, he returned home, and Ilana began drawing in sand as a symbol of the continuity of life. Please welcome Ilana Yahav.
To draw in sand the most horrific period in Jewish history is a privilege mixed with great pain. I stand over my sand table with trembling hands, my heart beating heavily, knowing, as I have known all my life, that I was there with them, in my heart and my soul.
in Latvia. Before being deported in the spring of 1942, they were transferred to the Riga ghetto and subsequently back to Germany. Please welcome Peter Stern.
Morning. I wish to start off by reintroducing myself. My name is Peter Günther Stern, a very Germanic name. I was born in 1936 in Nuremberg, Germany. My brother was born in 1939. His name's Samuel. His name's Samuel because of those laws that were first promulgated in Nuremberg. Those laws stated Jewish children had to have Jewish names out of the first books of the Bible. Girls, Ruth, Sarah. Boys, Abraham, Moses. My parents had seen some American movies, and therefore Sam had to be Samuel. My father was an auto mechanic who had a successful business and an auto electrician of some renown. He lost his business for the same reason, those laws said no Jews could have a business that dealt with people who weren't Jewish. And he started to teach in the Jewish school. And he taught the boys how to be auto mechanics, how to run a lathe, how to do things with their hands. By 1939, when my brother was born, we had already been moved out of our home, which I don't remember, to a Jew house. There were about 52 Jew houses in Nuremberg. This was not a ghetto. These houses were all over the city, and Jews were put into them. In the house we were in, there were about 4 or 5 families living on 2 floors, what once had been a rather substantial home. We lived there until 1939, November 29th, 1941. The war had already been 2 years going. At that point, 520 people, plus others, were put on a train to go to Latvia. Of those 520 people, there were 17 survivors. My mother, brother, and I being one. There were many other subsequent shipments to other places, with some with absolutely no survivors. When we were shipped to Latvia, we went to a place outside of the Riga ghetto, and we were there for some time. I should mention the fact that you have to remember that I was almost 6 when this started. So my memory has some fungible edges. But we were there for a few months, maybe one. And then were transferred to the Riga ghetto. The ghetto was a killing camp. People were taken out of the camp on trucks. I remember witnessing some of these trucks moving away, knowing things were not that good. We were there again for a few months.
We are experiencing some technical difficulties. Please stay with us and we will get it fixed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Do I start again?
Yes, please, continue.
When we were in the ghetto for some time, a few months, we were then taken out of that ghetto and put into a small apartment house, maybe 2-3 stories, from which my father would get the boys, I think the boys were still in the ghetto, would go to a place where they would fix German army vehicles. The building that we were in had another function. This was to sort the clothing that was taken of the people that had been killed. And that clothing was then shipped back to Germany. We were there again sometime and were then shipped again within Riga to the place where the cars were being fixed. At this point, we were in a small 2-room apartment, I guess. My mother would cook for the boys. This is something that goes on for some time. And we were there, again, that indeterminable amount of time. 1942, near the end, fall of 1942, we were then shipped to Russia. We were at a farm community, in a farmhouse, no fences, no guards, although there were German soldiers all around. To fix vehicles. The rule was if any of the boys tried to escape, we would be shot. Again, that indeterminable amount of time. We were there, and sometimes during our stay there, my father and some of the boys were taken deeper into Russia, fix a electrical transformer generator. I don't know truly what it was. And while there, the Soviets attacked. And my father somehow saved the life of a German officer, possibly the commander of that. And he came back with all the boys, and we were there for a very short time after that. Not that I knew that happened. So, and at this point, the Germans were losing the war. This is somewhere in 1943. The war essentially had been lost by Germany after the Battle of Stalingrad. When they closed this function, The boys were all shipped back to Riga, where most of them died. We, my family, was taken to the civil men's prison in Riga. This is like any movie you've ever seen about civil prison, cells, multiple floors, suicide screen between the balconies. And we were in one cell in that prison. My mother, for 3 months, never left that cell. My father was able to take my brother and me on yard walks occasionally. After near the end of 1943, we were taken out of that cell, and this is the first time that I truly sensed fear in my parents. We didn't know what was going to happen. They transferred us to another dingy cell, had names scrawled over the walls. My parents may have added names. But what did happen, we were taken out of that and put onto trucks, small, a little bit bigger than pickup trucks, which were loaded with clothing that was being taken back to Germany. And we were hidden underneath that clothing, riding from Latvia back to Germany. Every time we came to a guard station, we would have to dig under the clothing so we would not be discovered. The soldiers literally smuggled us back to Germany. We got to a city, I assume it was Berlin, but I don't know. And we were given up to the civil authority, at which point we were put in front of the judge, did a lot of screaming, and my father was sent to Buchenwald, where he died. And my mother, brother, and I were sent to Ravensbrück, which was a women's concentration camp, which had many different prisoners, gypsies, Jews, political prisoners, criminals, deviants, all of them wearing different badges. Lesbians had pink triangles. Red was a political prisoner. Black, I believe, criminal. Purple was a gypsy. Gypsies, by the way, were the forgotten people of this Holocaust. This is the place where many medical experiments were done on prisoners in Ravensbrück, particularly on the gypsies. We were there for over a year. My mother worked in the fields. She may have also worked in some of the factories. All of the big corporations used slave labor. Siemens was one of the factories that used some of the people from Ravensbrück. Many of the prisoners were used in clothing manufacture. Again, since they were losing the war, the prison had to be overloaded with people who had been transferred from Auschwitz. Near the end of 1944, they established a gas chamber in Ravensbrück itself, and about 5,000 of the inmates were killed. But this camp also had to be emptied, as far as their reasoning went. and we were shipped to Bergen-Belsen by cattle car. It shouldn't have taken that long, but as I remember, I think it took a couple of days. The thing that is prevalent in all the camps, that was most prevalent, obviously, in that ride, that cattle car, is the stench of death. And it's one thing that comes back to me every time I see cattle car. We were in Bergen-Belsen, I would say, for about 6 weeks. Late February till April 15th. On April 15th, British liberated the camp. The camp was rife with typhoid fever. People were dying well after the rescue because the English didn't know that if you fed the prisoners and the soldiers instinctively, shared their rations with the prisoners, that the prisoners, many of them died because they couldn't take that. The camp had to be burned down physically to contain all this disease. The prisoners were sent to various other camps, military camps, old German military camps. We were sent to a Panzer training school, at which point my mother had a breakdown. And we were there from April till September that year. At that point, we were shipped back to Nuremberg, and we stayed in an old age home that had been used by Jews before the war. I remember visiting it before it had been deported. We stayed there for a year, then went to 2 different displacement camps, at which point we had a boat ride that was a trip in itself, in that we started on January 7th and landed the 27th. It was the winter of 1947, which was, I understand, horrible. We arrived in New York, at which point I was detained on Ellis Island because they had found a spot on my lungs. However, after a certain amount of time, I was released, and we met my mother's brothers, one of whom who had come here in 1933, 18-year-old boy, and another brother who had escaped Germany on the day that the war started and got to England. The war started. Therefore, since he was a German national, the English put him into a camp and transferred him to Canada, from where he was released from that camp in 1943, I believe. At any rate, because we had no place to go, my mother and brother went to a cousin she had here, who had come here in the 1920s. And I went with my uncle to Florida because of my health. Florida was a very strange sensation, in part because this is the first time I was separated from my brother and mother. And the other part was just Florida. At that time, the only thing recognizable to me were the shell insignia, which was the same all over the world, and the way Black America was treated was the same as I remember. I started off in my age school, 5th grade. Obviously, I could not handle that. I was put in 2nd grade. At the end of the school year, went back to New York, where I then got into 3rd grade. Halfway through, skipped to 5th grade. End of 5th grade, skipped into 7th grade. And lo and behold, as far as the schools were concerned, I was caught up, although that was not quite true. The end of 8th grade, because I never really caught up, I went to a vocational high school. Learned to be a refrigeration mechanic. I don't know what that is. And then went to, after graduation, got to junior college, finished that, worked for a year, went back to school, got to be a metallurgical engineer, came out, worked at that for 10 years, then for the next 30 years worked as a 7th and 8th grade science teacher. My mother remarried. She married a man who survived the Holocaust by being in the Soviet army, but he was also from Nuremberg originally. And my brother went a more conventional educational route and got a PhD in biology and retired from Boston University in 2001. I have a wife, 2 sons, 3 grandchildren, and been living a good life. And I'm more than willing to answer any questions on this very sparse and rapid recitation of my life. So.
Thank you, Peter. Since time is almost over, we do want to ask one question. What is, in your opinion, the biggest lesson or the biggest takeaway from your experience?
I always ask the question of when I speak, why do we speak, all of us survivors? And eventually, it's mostly children come up with that, well, maybe you want to somehow prevent this from happening again. And people say, well, history repeats. Well, Mark Twain says it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Ken Burns said, history doesn't repeat itself, but human nature doesn't change. I believe we can make a difference. My experience as an educator, storyteller, tells me that you can get to tell the stories and people who absorb it, and some of them will act. The takeaway is be involved. Don't let others do it for you because they may not have it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Peter. And thank you all for being here today. The main ceremony has now ended, and we hope you will continue with this program and go to breakout sessions to allow further learning and discussions. If you pre-registered, please use your confirmation link, and you can also find the links for the different session available in the chat box right now. It was sent. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy and stay safe.